So one of the themes of the whole Seder of Nashim, the whole order of women, is about the power of the word, who is believed and who is true. So the Mishnah spoke about someone who'd given his daughter in betrothal. He can't remember who he betrothed her to. And some guy shows up saying it was me. Well, do we believe the guy or not? And similarly, and now we're in eighth chapter, eighth Mishnah, the third chapter of Kiddushin. This father, he must be an absolute. Well, this father says, Kidashti et biti ktana, Kidashti havegerashti kshihi ktana, veharehi ktana ne'eman. I betrothed my minor daughter. So he says that he betrothed her while she was a minor. That means, for example, that she's not permitted to any man. Or maybe he says, Kidashti havegerashti kshihi ktana, I betrothed her and she was divorced. I accepted her get. I accepted her divorce when she was a minor. It can happen. V'harehi ktana, and she's still a minor. The implication of that, by the way, is that she can now no longer marry a kohen. She can't marry a priest because she's been divorced. But we do trust him, Ne'eman. He had, at this point, it seems, that this is between the age of 12 and 12 and a half in terms of his daughter. It's as if he does have power to take decisions about his daughter. And so we believe him when he makes these statements. I guess he would have the power to marry her off anyway. But once she becomes of majority age, everything changes. So if he says, if he says, I betrothed her and divorced her while she was still a minor, and she's now over the age of majority, he's not believed. So in other words, his responsibility for this child ends at a certain point. He cannot come in later and say, oh yeah, she is not eligible to marry a Kohen because of something I did while she was a minor. Once she's of majority age, essentially, well, he should have made that disclosure before. He cannot make it. He cannot make it now. And similarly, nishbeit ufiditiha, we'll see that now that the interests and the interests and the biases come out. Nishbeit ufdatiha, she was taken captive and I redeemed her. Now again, if she's been taken captive, she's not eligible to marry a priest because the assumption is that she was sexually abused in captivity. That is the core assumption of the Mishnah in terms of anybody taken captive by Gentiles in those days. Nishbeit ufditiha, she was captive, I redeemed her. Whether she's a minor or whether she's a major, he's not believed. He doesn't have the right to just make an unsupported statement that his daughter can't marry a Kohen. Mishemet ve'amar b'shat mitato, someone who dies and who declares at the time of his death, Yeshli banim, I have brothers. So now we're affecting not so much his daughter, but we're affecting his wife. Because if he has brothers, Yeshli Mishemet ve'amar b'shat mitato Yeshli banim, someone who dies and declares at the time of his death, I have sons. So by declaring I have sons, he is effectively exempting his wife from Yibum. If he has sons, then she doesn't have to marry his brother. And that can be important for his wife. By the way, he could achieve the same end by giving her a get. And we learned in the tractate of Gittin that sometimes someone will give his wife a get, a bill of divorce, on his deathbed in order to make sure she doesn't need to bother with Yibum, with possible ties to her brother-in-law. So Mishemet ve'amar b'shatat mishat mitato yeshli banim ne'eman. So he says that he's believed. We do trust him in terms of his capacity to exempt his wife from Yibum. If he says, Yesh li achim, I have brothers, Eino ne'eman, he is not believed. He isn't believed when he effectively traps his wife into Yibum by stating he has brothers. He is believed when he exempts his wife by saying that he has sons. And then following off that subject, someone who betroths his daughter without any conditions, ein habogarot bichlal, the daughters of majority age are not included. So if he says, oh yeah, I'm going to marry off my daughter to somebody without specifying her name, he's clearly not talking about one of his elder daughters. And we're going to learn a bit more about this in the next Mishnah. Misha yesh lo shtei kite banot, someone who's got two bunches of daughters, two groups of daughters. Mishtei nashim, from two wives. Ve'amar, kitashche biti gdola ve'eino yodea im gdola sheba gdolot or gdola sheba ktanot. I betrothed my big daughter, my elder daughter, but I don't know. Sounds like he doesn't remember whether I betrothed the eldest of the elder bunch or the eldest of the junior bunch, because he's got two bunches of daughters. Or ktana sheba gdolot, maybe he betrothed the younger of the elder bunch. Shehi gdola min ha-gdola min ha-sheba ktanot. Maybe he betrothed the youngest of the senior bunch, who is obviously who might be in this case older than the eldest of the junior bunch. In other words, there's complete confusion. And Rabbi Meir is going to say they're all forbidden. Kulam asurot, they're all forbidden, according to Rabbi Meir. Chutz min haktana sheba ktanot. Kulam asurot divrei Rabbi Meir, chutz min haktana sheba ktanot. They're all forbidden, according to Rabbi Meir, except the youngest of the juniors. So this is a terrible outcome, by the way, for these girls. Maybe there's 6 girls. And Rabbi Meir is saying, hey, 5 of them can't marry anybody, because they might have been betrothed to this, well, we don't know who the guy is. 5 of them are forbidden to any man until we resolve this. The only one that's free is the youngest of the younger ones. And you can imagine the halakha cannot accept this. The halakha does not accept this. The halakha goes according to Rabbi Yossi, who says, Rabbi Yossi Omer, kulam mutarot. Rabbi Yossi says they're all permitted. Chutz min hagdolah sheba gdolot, except the eldest of the eldest bunch. In other words, if he says, Kidashti et biti gdolah, I betroth my eldest daughter, we know we're talking about the very eldest daughter and nobody else. And surprisingly, but we know, and the Gemara questions this, but we know the Mishnah is poetry. The Mishnah then goes and repeats this whole discursus for someone who makes the opposite statement. Kidashti et biti ktana, I betrothed my younger daughter. This is the same guy. He's got these 2 groups. He's got these 6 daughters. He's got 3 in an elder group and 3 in a younger group. And he says, Kidashti et biti ktana, I've betrothed my little girl, my younger daughter. Ve'eino yodea, he doesn't know. Im ktana sheba ktanot, or ktana sheba gdolot, or gdolah sheba ktanot. He doesn't know whether he's talking about the youngest of the juniors, or the youngest of the seniors, or maybe the biggest of the juniors. Shehi ktana min haktana sheba gdolot. The youngest of the biggest of the juniors is still younger than the youngest of the seniors. She's in the middle, right? And Rabbi Meir makes the same ruling. Kulam asurot divrei Rabbi Meir chutz min hagdolah sheba gdolot. Rabbi Meir says they're all forbidden, except the eldest of the senior bunch. In other words, he says he's married off the younger daughter. Rabbi Meir is going to essentially tie up the 5 youngest daughters. The only one who's exempt is the eldest of the elder bunch. And again, the halakha can't accept this, and Rabbi Yossi comes along and says Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kulam Mutarot. Rabbi Yossi says they're all permitted. Chutz min haktana shebaktanot, except for the smallest of the small bunch. So Rabbi Yossi will identify one daughter who's trapped by this rather unfortunate loose language of the betrothal, and the rest are all free to marry whomsoever they please.